Hello there everybody, welcome to the first part of a little series that I'm putting together on how to hack games. And how to hack games, well, there are various different hacks that you can do to games, and in this video we'll be taking a look at how to change the colours of certain games. And so, if you remember these screen tools, I made a video about all of these hacking tools and tools that I've installed on my hard drive. All I'm going to do is leave that out on the desktop and then we can access it. So this is Colours, this is by Ian J. Einman, and you can see on the workbench we've got 4 basic colours which we can change. And so that's how you use the package. It's got some basic options on the bottom of it, and it's got some other options as well by pull down menus. We'll be taking a look at them maybe a bit later on, and there you can change the colour to grayscale if you wanted to, and you can load and save a palette from here, which is very handy indeed. And you can undo your last move and cut and paste, and the most important one is under the control menu. From here we can go up to the next screen and the previous one. So let's open up a new public screen. Let's open up Directory Opus, and by clicking on the bottom bar, if you click on the top one sometimes it crashes it, but if you click on the bottom bar to select it, we can now go to the next screen. And you can see in Directory Opus it looks like we've got 8 colours to play with, and that means we've got double the amount. And of course you can see as we make those changes it will now change the screen and the colours on that screen. So we can swap things around and we can do the normal stuff, and of course Directory Opus has its own colours that you can change within the package itself. You don't need this routine to change them. And then you can reset it back if you want to abort all of that. So that's how to use the package. So how do we use that particularly with games? Well, games need to be installed on the hard drive for this to work, and they need to be Workbench compatible. And that's pretty difficult because WHD load games won't work because it cuts out Workbench and stops all of Workbench from running. So what we need to find is a game that has a local installer. That is, the application has to have a directory in there which has all the native install files. So if we look at Zack McCracken WHD load, it's got a data directory, and in there are, well, the 3 icons point towards the Zack and the rooms drawer. So that is the executable. What we need to do then is to run the executable, and then it will keep Workbench running in the background because using the run command. And so when you run that, hopefully the game will start up, and you can see a pretty CGI looking palette, Lucasfilm. So this is the WHD load of the game that we're running at the moment, but we're looking in the data directory, and in there it has the original install package that we can run directly off the hard drive. That won't be cracked, unfortunately, and you can't take advantage of any of the WHD load features either because we're not running WHD load. But what we can do at the moment, you can see the game's running, the clock is ticking. The first thing we need to do is pause the game, otherwise the thing will flicker on the background and it won't do much. So let's pause the game, and then if we hold down the right Amiga key and press M, that will take us back to our previous screen. So in this case it's Workbench, and it's running because we use the run command. So that means the game is running and Workbench is running. So that means if I choose the next screen, hopefully it means it will pop up, and you can see a nice 16 colour register now on this particular game. And by clicking on them and by dragging these boxes up and down, we can change those colours to whatever we like. And this being a 16 colour game, it reminds me of an EGA palette, and those are pretty garish. They are even worse than a Commodore 64 palette because instead of being pastel colours, they're prime colours. So if you knock those down a few shades either direction, then let's speed this footage up. It should mean that the whole thing looks a lot prettier, and you can even change various colours as well. So all I'm doing is taking off the top notes of that colour and making it a lighter pink and a lighter yellow and a lighter green and that kind of thing, and hopefully those colours will begin to merge with each other. You can see in the background it is doing something to the game, and we can't see much of it at the moment. So this is now done. We can now save that palette if we want to reload it again, and definitely if you're reloading the game up, you can now toggle back to Workbench and save and load a palette. And you can see in the range we can select all and shift left and right. We can spread those about, we can change the hue and sort them. But for now this is a room, and when we click off that screen our editor will disappear, but it's still there in the background, unfortunately. So this is what happens sometimes when you load up the editor on a game. It will be semi-transparent in the background. You have to click on all of the different options and then find wherever the bar is on the bottom, and hopefully then the values will change. So I'm going to use this opportunity now I can see the game in action to fine tune the palette. And for that it means we're going to have to switch all the colours on, and so let's click on a few of them and then we can get an idea of the palette that we're talking about, and then we can literally select one and fine tune it. So, well, the blue, let's move that down a little bit, and then by pressing OK and then the P key to unpause the game, we're now running it. You can see the fish tank has got a nice yellow fish in there, and everything's nice and wooden. The desk and everything else has got a kind of a homely feel to it and not an EGA feel to it anymore. And this is just a sample palette. This is just me turning the colours down a little bit, and you can see in the main room everything's still looking pretty garish with that horrible colour, but hopefully it's better than it was before. Checking out the other rooms of the game, obviously every single thing will be changed in the game because the game uses a stock colour palette. So on this one you can see the carpet is a bit different, you can see nice things in the background, and so this screen will look slightly different now than it did before. And let's move out to the street, I think, because hopefully if we move out into the street, well, you can see I can't now tab back to Workbench. It'll only let you do it the once, unfortunately. So now we're locked out of Workbench. We can't change the colours again with this particular game, and that's just how it operates. So Workbench is running in the background, but we can't access it. You can see the bakery's got a nice red, white and blue colour to it, and the stonework is a nice stone brick colour instead of whatever it was before. And everything else is looking pretty nice. Of course the grey scale palette isn't going to be really changed by this, and you can see the signs are now no longer eye popping, and the background image, well, you can see there's a nice sunset now in San Francisco. So if we move from screen to screen, that will now be a nice sunset image instead of what we had before. So that's how to change the colour palette on this particular game. And so let's see if we can quit out of that. I don't think there is actually an internal option to quit. So all we can do at this point, well, we can't save our palette up because we can't access that anymore, so let's just reset the machine. And let's think about this again, and usually I'll put the colours back on, but if you remember we left it on the backdrop, so let's place that again. And now let's think about another game which is based on DOS. So I had the idea of running Battle Chess from CLI. This is the HD install of the original Battle Chess, and if you run that it'll work. So let's type that in, and you can see the picture's fine, but because of the CPU that I'm using at the moment and maybe one or two other things, it's crashed the graphics. So what I did, well, let's go back to CLI, let's try that again. And usually, because the caches involved with your 30 corrupt the graphics, what I did last time in my warm-up try in this game is turn the caches off, and then I could run the executable again, and that would mean the graphics are no longer crashed. Fortunately, it still crashed the graphics, on this second playthrough, the one that I'm actually recording with, so that didn't work, unfortunately. So what else can we do? Well, we can still access that from the Workbench. So if we bring that file up again, hopefully from Workbench, we can access the icon because it's the original HD install, it's not the WHD load version. On this particular case, you can see game, that's what it is, and that's basically, well, it asks us, I think, for the password. I think it's been cracked. So now we're in that, we can now run it from Workbench. It's running without crash graphics. Great. So now we can press the magic key, get back to Workbench, and now we can bring up the colour palette editing tool, switch to the next screen, and now I've got a glorious 32 colours to mess around with in this particular game. So the first thing I'm going to do is to change the yellow in the background to a nice sandy colour. That means we're running that with a nice sandy background rather than a stark yellow one, which is a bit naff on the Amiga. And you can see the primary, well, pink and also blue as well. Let's just try to change that to a kind of purpley colour, and the blue as well in the background. We can change that to whatever we like, maybe a green, or we can have that yellow or whatever we want. So let's just try this particular combination, and you can see we can change all different kinds of things and toggle them around and all kinds of things like that. But that's pretty good. That's an average thing. So you can see that the window is still in the background. So on this particular game, if we try a new game, it's still corrupted the background, but if we set up a board, that should get rid of it, and now returning back to the game again, that gives us our new palette. So we can now play the game with our new palette. It's now got a nice sandy beach on the bottom of it, and various colours you can see on the screen. But with this game, it does actually run Workbench in the background of it, so let's just run that application again, and now we can carry on if we wanted to do fine tuning. So with this particular game, it does happily run in Workbench and on top of it, which means we can bring the program back up again and finish off these colours. So let's change it to a nice deep purple colour, speed up that footage a little bit, and now we can have, well, let's just try to reset that screen again. Clicking on that, there's nothing in the background, so let's set up the board, and that looks very nice, purple against lavender colour, and yeah, very nice. So that's a demonstration of how to change the colours in Battle Chess. Of course, you can change them to anything you like, it doesn't have to be these colours. So that's that game, and so the best things to look out for, usually, if you're hacking colours, are the adventure games, because they usually come with a hard drive installer. And so let's think about that. The adventure games, usually the American ones, have a hard drive installer, so the epitome of those is the point and click adventure. We've seen Zack McCracken already. So what else can we go for? Well, none of these are looking very good because most of these are WHD load versions. So let's have a look at something American. Leisure Suit Larry. Has that got, well, that's the WHD load version, but has that got a data directory behind it so that we can actually use it? Let's show all the files, and no, it comes on one disk. So that's no good. That's going to try to run it in WHD load. So let's try the second one. Has this got a directory there? Yes, it has. Data. And I presume it's Leisure Suit Larry 2 is the executable. And so let's run that. And now it comes up with the password protection system because we're running the game directly and we're not running the WHD load. Unfortunately, all of the cracks that we had on there and the password skips and all that lot will no longer work because we're running the original game. So you're going to need the manual. And so it looks like we've got another 16 colour palette. And you can load a palette once you've saved one. And so at the moment I'm just trying to remember where I've saved. I have saved a palette somewhere on this hard drive. Let's just speed it up until I remember where it was. Palettes. So I've got Monkey Island, the Secrets of Monkey Island palette. So let's load that into this game instead. And I'm not sure if that's actually worked, but according to that it is there. I don't recognise the colour palette from the Secrets of Monkey Island, but anyway, that's what I managed to rip from that. And we can obviously attune and adjust all those colours. So that's completely messed everything up, but that's how you can change the colours in Leisure Suit Larry. And I think if we get the password wrong, it's going to boot us out of the game. Sorry, you need to spend more time reading the password, unfortunately. So we can hack Leisure Suit Larry too. So let's have another look. And obviously the Quest games, the Sierra Quest, Space Quest, Police Quest, that kind of thing, is an American game. So has that got? Yes, it has. It's got the original hard drive package installed in there. King's Quest 1, I presume that's it. Let's try running it. So this is the enhanced version of King's Quest 1 that we're running now. This is a different version to the original. You can see it comes with a nice, beautiful EGA CGA colour palette that looks horrible, and this was lifted directly off the PC. So let's just begin that game and admire those horrible colours that they chose on the enhanced version. That's pretty dark green. It doesn't look like anything near grass. The water looks horrible blue colour. So what can we do? Well, you know exactly what we're going to do. We're going to switch it over. And because the game is actually running, we should have paused it, but because the game is actually running, it's going to be running in the background. You can see it's trying to draw the sprite on the screen, and the door, and also the dragon. So in this case, I've left the game running whilst we're doing this. Sometimes it makes this colour program flicker like crazy if you do that, so that's not automatically recommended. But we can now change a few of these colours. There's just enough of them in the background that we can see them, and again all I'm doing is knocking the harshness off them. If you can't find where the marker is, if you keep clicking in one spot in that bar, the marker will eventually get to the pointer, and when it does so it will flash. You can then hold down the pointer over the bar and then drag it wherever you like. So let's click on it, there it is, click on it. And sometimes if you click on it you notice it corrupting the graphics as well from wherever it is. Obviously if it's in 0 it should be all the way over to the left, and if it's 100 it should be all the way over to the right. So let's just knock down those primary colours a little bit, and then it doesn't look too horrible. And this is only using a 16 colour palette. This is supposed to be the enhanced version, and yet it's only using a 16 colour palette. So that's not too bad, and you can see everything's more or less pastel-y in colour now, and there are 2 dragons playing at the bottom of the screen. I think that's all we can do for the moment, so let's have a look at that. And so the grass is, well, better than it was. Definitely it's more of a natural shade of green on the flowers and the grass. And the water actually looks something that resembles more like water, rather than a bright blue pool of, well, I've never actually seen a lake that looks dark blue before. So you can see the colours are now quite good. That thing in the background, maybe a vase or an urn or whatever that is, that's still pretty terrible. So let's have a flip back. Let's just edit those colours again on the fly, and you can see the face as well on the main character isn't particularly a nice beige or a cream colour or whatever. It's basically, well, it's got a suntan, but let's not worry about that. Let's just tone down the blue on the scenery behind us. Now you can see it's now a proper blue instead of a cyan, so that looks more likely to be, well, you can see that the colour changes, just changing those few colours, it's made them more realistic and lifelike, simply because those colours appear in nature, and the dark blue and the bright green certainly don't. So these colours is now the enhanced version of the enhanced version. You can see a very nice water reflection, and the flowers, and blue water and the grass, and even a blue bird which flies across is now a deeper blue and a better coloured version of blue because we've changed the colour palette. So you can see the water is now beautiful water, and the grass as well, and by adjusting that palette just a bit more we can have that game running and looking immaculate, or at least 100% better than the pathetic colour palette that it was released with at the time. So let's close the enhanced, in quotation marks, version of that game. But it doesn't work with all games, and it doesn't work with too many, unfortunately, and you're going to need to know the name of the executable, and I think it's prog, to be honest. And if you run the wrong executable, obviously it's not going to work. So this is Conquest of the Longbow. It probably should work if we run the right executable. There's Robin there. I'm not quite sure. Let's just try and run it anyway. And it says can't load Amiga 3 driver, whatever. So maybe we chose the wrong executable. But sometimes it won't work, and sometimes, look at that, I can't even return back to Workbench again. The whole thing is locked me out. Taking a look at other games, this is the hard drive installation of Sherman M4. And you can see, well, I'm trying to press the return to Workbench screen, but it's not doing anything at the moment. So, fortunately, it doesn't work with that game. And Lost Vikings also comes with the Workbench installer. Let's try that. Unfortunately, it's locked us out. Even though we're trying to run it, it's locked us out of Workbench, so we can't return to Workbench and change this pretty pathetic screen colour that we've got at the moment, which of course was based on the PC version. So we hopefully can change some things but not others. Shanghai, you might remember, is public domain game, I think. Many people had Shanghai, and it's hard drive installable, and it looks like it's able to run on top of Workbench. So let's run that, let's start it, let's flip it back, and you can see a pretty deep dark green colour on the floor, which looks like more like a snooker table. So let's just change that and make that a slightly more common green so it fits in. And again we've got a nice beautiful 32 colours to play around with, a light shade and a dark shade. So maybe this is simply running, well, it could be running extra half bright mode, but it isn't, because that would change both the colours. As soon as you change one, it would change the lower one as well. But they've done a kind of a half bright mode on the top row. So you can change, let's just change the thing down to a bit of a bluey grey colour, and that looks a bit better. We can change the screen brightness down as well by doing that, and let's just make everything a bit friendlier looking. So I'm trying to change the red, nothing's moving, so that's obviously not a red on the board, but you can see now it looks like a more natural green background, and everything looks a lot more 3D. Now that the colour palette has just been changed, it looks more attractive, and that's an amazing thing. All we did was change a few colours, and they were too lazy to do that at the time. We can hack the games, and if you're using WHD load, well, if you're using the modern emulators, of course we can save state our progress. So hopefully if it's a single load we can save state our screen changes and load that back up again. But very few of these are single load, unfortunately. You can see I cannot return back, unfortunately, to Workbench using Interceptor, even though that is, I think, the original installation that I'm running, although it didn't ask for a password, so maybe it isn't. Let's see if we get through it yet. So obviously it isn't, it's still a crack. But if you can get this working on Workbench, then you can change these primary colours about, and we can edit those in Interceptor. But I couldn't get that to work, unfortunately. So you might have better luck with different games and trying to run them and getting them compatible with Workbench. Sometimes Workbench won't even close if you've got programs on there interrupting a program from closing. So that's how to hack some of the colours on some of the games on the Amiga. Thank you.